Welcome back. Just before the break, we were speaking to President Morales about his opponents. President Morales, I'd like to ask you now, what will you do if Santa Cruz, the department or the province that is one of the richest in this country, makes good on its threat to go ahead with an autonomy referendum in just about 1 month? Would you say that this is illegal? Would you send in troops to stop it?
No, por ahora estamos apostando por el diálogo.
No. For now, we are betting on dialogue.
Tengo información que
We know there is tremendous concern about this among the Bolivian people, not just the national government.
y apostaremos por el diálogo para evitar
We are betting on a dialogue to prevent Bolivia from being divided up.
responsabilidad.
It's the responsibility of our institutions and also the international organizations.
También de los organismos
Thankfully, I have received messages from the international community saying they will never recognize this separatism,
jamás van a reconocer
and it is our job to find a peaceful solution through dialogue.
soluciones pacíficas mediante el diálogo.
And if that doesn't work?
No tengo
I have faith that this will be resolved through dialogue.
You recently said that the United States government was pushing to try to turn Bolivia into a kind of a Kosovo. What proof do you have of that?
Mira, primero los parlamentarios.
First, the American congressman that visited me recently asked me to support that division of Kosovo.
Conspiración contra mi
It's
gobierno
impossible that we can support the division of a country.
USAID.
Secondly, the conspiracy against my government is headed by the US ambassador. USAID, with funds that come from American taxpayers who think that they are helping the Bolivian people, is using the money in a dirty campaign against my government and especially against me.
Los mensajes que se
They meet with NGOs and other groups here, always with the intention of conspiring.
las reuniones con algunas ONGs son todo
They offer them money on condition that they take part in the campaign against Evo Morales.
con la condición de que hagan una campaña contra Evo Morales. Un alcalde.
The mayor of a city who recently visited me told me he was offered money by the USAID agency to run as an opposition congressman.
Y ofrecieron pagar.
They even offered to pay for his campaign.
Y el alcalde me dice.
And the mayor told me that the people who work for the US agency go from house to house
Casa por casa diciendo.
telling people that if they get rid of Evo Morales, they will have more money.
Van a tener mucha más plata ustedes.
If we wanted to document this, we could.
Y si quisiéramos documentar esto.
We are going to present the documents to prove this to the US Congress.
Presentar estos documentos al Congreso norteamericano.
You are a staunch admirer of Cuba's president, or former president, Fidel Castro. You are also a very close friend of Venezuela's Hugo Chavez. How much or how similar is your revolution to theirs?
Bueno, somos.
We are very different countries with very different political processes.
Y con procesos diferentes.
But altogether, we are pushing for greater social justice.
Para que haya una justicia social.
The goal is the same. I remember in 2002, President Fidel, in a big international conference, said, "Don't do what I did."
Se refería a la lucha armada. Hagan lo que hizo Chávez.
He was referring to the armed struggle. He said, "Do what Chavez did." He won through the ballot box. He won an election and guaranteed transformations and a new political constitution for Venezuela.
Y entendí que hoy, en estos tiempos,
And I understood that today, it is no longer the people who take up arms against the empire, but rather the empire that is using weapons against the people.
dijimos acá, no a las armas. Sí a
Here, we have said no to weapons and yes to the ballot box to achieve profound changes.
toda la lucha.
Therefore, the democracies we are seeing today in Latin America are liberationist,
Democracias liberadoras y no sometidas, subordiнаdas al imperio.
not submissive to the empire. Yesterday, I mentioned in an interview with another journalist
Le comentaba, muy satisfecho de la última reunión.
that I was very satisfied with the recent Rio Group Summit, where amongst ourselves, we Latin Americans have resolved a problem, a conflict in our region.
El gobierno de Estados Unidos.
Before, who resolved all this? The government of the United States.
Esa clase de presencia de Estados Unidos.
We are beginning to leave all that behind us.
Como grandes dueños vienen a resolver los problemas.
That the United States can be like a giant referee or like a big owner that comes to decide our problems. And I feel that Latin America is advancing a lot in its democratic path of liberation, of dignity. And we will continue to do this. Before, there was only one big nation, the United States. Then came Venezuela with a leader like Hugo Chavez, and now there are others with their own reality. For example, I respect Lula tremendously. He is working for the poor. And there are others who are making great efforts, for example, Argentina. 5 or 6 years ago, it was a country that was falling apart. Then came President Kirchner. He put the country back on its feet, respecting private property. In Venezuela, they also respect private property. And in the new constitution of Bolivia, we also guarantee private property. I can't remember which article it is. But you see, we are so diverse, not just physically, but also economically too. So respect 3 types of economy: private, public, and collective property. This is very advanced. That's our reality. There may be some differences, but the goals are the same. That's what we all agree.
Well, let me be the devil's advocate. The Bush administration has said that you, President Castro and President Chavez, form an axis of evil of South America. So I ask you, explain to me, if you can, your new friendship with Iran. The Iranian president, in fact, came all the way to Bolivia. What is the basis of that relationship that you're forging?
Look, the world and humanity will be the judge of who forms the axis of evil. As far as I know, Cuba doesn't send troops anywhere to take lives. We have Cuban doctors here who save lives. But before, we had American soldiers who killed people. In the protest meetings, there were American soldiers with uniforms who fired against us. They fired at us. While the Bush administration sends troops to kill people, Iran, for example, does not. That's the big difference. Iran and Bolivia have signed a number of accords in the area of cooperation, investment. Our culture is one of dialogue, and we have the right to broaden our diplomatic relations with the countries who cooperate and help our people. And our accords have nothing to do with killing people.
But what sort of accords are you reaching?
I repeat, agreements of cooperation and investment to resolve our social problems in the area of fossil fuel and agriculture, earmarked at meeting social demands of our people.
I'd like to finish by asking you, where do you see your country in 10 years? This is the poorest country in South America, but you have tremendous wealth, natural gas, for example. In 10 years from now, where will this country be?
At the pace we are going, Bolivia will improve. But if the exponents of free markets return, or the conservatives, who only want to use our people to exploit them, who only want our land, our Pachamama or Mother Earth, to ransack it, then Bolivia will remain as in the past. Thanks to the change of our fossil fuel law and the nationalization of our fossil fuels, our economy is doing very well. I'll give you an example. In 2005, our international reserves were $1.7 billion. Today we have more than $6 billion. In 2003 and 2004, we never had more than $1 billion in reserves. In 2 years, we've grown enormously. Therefore, Bolivia is trustworthy. Bolivia is viable. And not like before, when they used to say, Bolivia is unviable. Unviable because our economic model was one of ransacking of our resources. Now we have policies for structural transformations, but also social transformations. So 10 years from now, at this rate, Bolivia will no longer be at the bottom of the list in South America. In fact, in some areas, we are no longer at the bottom. In 2006, when I became president, Bolivia had the lowest international reserves in the region. Now there are 3 or 4 others who have less than us, and so on. I could mention others. But most of all, prosperity means attending to our nation's social problems.
I want to thank you very much, President Morales, for talking to Al Jazeera.
Muchas gracias.